That is the outro.
That's amazing.
And we're live.
Hi.
Hi everyone. My name's Amelia, and I would like to acknowledge the country we're on, the unceded lands of the Yagara and Turrbal, the people of Meanjin. We acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and extend that acknowledgement to First Nations people joining us today. And if you're not in Meanjin, take a moment to acknowledge the country you are joining us in. Welcome to the live stream. This is a live stream, as you can tell from the botched intro. Sorry about that. That was my fault.
But you also fixed it.
Yeah.
No, Marisa fixed it. Marisa was like, there's a button that says go live. I'm like, when was there a button that goes live?
Yeah, I believe Amelia when she says the button wasn't there last time.
So please talk to us in the comments. Any of your thoughts at any point, I'll convey it to the rest of the people. This discussion will be recorded and available forever on YouTube. So please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Forever and ever and ever. And this time we're trying it with like subtitles or captions, but we aren't doing that. Like AI is doing that. So please be wary of any incorrectness.
Incorrectedness?
Yes.
Did it caption that right?
I don't know. I haven't. We'll see. We'll see when we watch it back millions of times.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, I'll pass it on to Marisa. It's your ball now.
Okay. Who's Beaver?
Who's Beaver?
Who's Beaver? If you haven't joined us before, Beaver is an arts initiative that originally started during COVID and ended up going dormant and then getting revived by Amelia, Gnome and myself. And we're a humble little arts initiative that does things very inconsistently, that is really focused on creating an artist-centered industry, an artist-centered arts industry. We're particularly interested in anti-capitalist ways to do that. And yeah, we do a lot of different things. Some of our activity is actually invisible and kind of under the radar. So we do like informal sort of peer support kind of things. We also do critical reflections with people. So, you know, like people who feel like, you know, they're having some bad feelings about something that's happened. You know, we create a safe space to work through those things as well. And yeah, we're just people about town, kind of, yeah, doing what we do. And we have these live streams. So, Gnome, tell us what we're talking about today.
Cool, yeah. We're doing a new thing called BVAA Imagines. And hopefully it will be an ongoing series of discussions with different amazing guests. In line with what Marisa was saying about like Beaver doing things in an anti-capitalist way, these are kind of like spaces to imagine what art making would look like outside of the constraints of the capitalist structure that we're currently in. So like there is a lot of dystopian imaginings about our future, but very little narrative around utopian futures. And I'm going to be nerdy and give you a Mark Fisher quote from Capitalist realism, where he said that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism because of like how ingrained it is into our thinking. And it's pretty understandable that there's a lot of dystopian imaginings when you think about a prefrontal cortex reasoning sort of thing, like where survival kind of leaks into our imaginings. We're trying to preempt what could go wrong so that we can be prepared to mitigate against it. But it's not super great for like your nervous system, your reptilian brain, because if you're always imagining the worst case scenario, your nerves will respond to that. And so that's like where overwhelm comes in, cue anxiety, depression, burnout, all of that kind of fun stuff, because your body doesn't know what it feels like to be safe and okay. So BVAA Imagines visioning sessions, we're going to try and create that space to imagine what it would feel like to be okay and try that on in our bodies.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about only having these dystopian visions for the future is that we don't know what we're aiming towards. So, you know, I've been to sessions before where artists are kind of being like surveyed and being asked what they think needs to happen in our own industry, and everyone has like so many complaints, like, and we're going to complain for a bit, so you know, complaining is fine, but you just also need that other side of like, okay, what do we actually want as the goal and what's going to get us closer to that. Yeah.
So welcome to our special guest Darcy Williams
Hey,
for joining us today. We're super stoked that you're here. I'm going to talk about you for a bit. So Darcy Williams is a queer artist, emerging artist, queer person, arts worker, living and working in Meanjin. They have an exhibition up at the moment at Milani Gallery in the car park space. Vaseline. It's on until the 26th of August, and it was really good.
Thank you. That's very nice.
So go see it. And yeah, Darcy paints, and their work draws on the political and emotional concerns of domestic and everyday life. And Darcy uses painting the everyday as a psychological space for larger issues to be played out and investigated. So
that sounds like something like
Yeah.
quite close to what
Darcy
I
has really
wrote.
good context.
I mind your bio. That's what people do.
Where'd you get my bio? Where put it
I
at?
had to look for it. You don't have a website.
Yeah. Where did I put it? Oh my god, I can't even remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's still mostly true. It's a few
Still
years
mostly
old,
true,
but
yeah.
yeah, it's mostly true.
Do you want to give an update?
The practice has shifted more to focusing on languages of history, both art historical, anecdotal, I guess like more everyday, and I don't know what the word is, but just like less precious. The show at the moment, a lot of the figures are drawn from Vintage Beefcake and Physique magazines, but also Greek sculptures and you know, paintings of like David Hockneys and Botticelli's and that sort of stuff. So yeah, like it's...
I like what you wrote about psychological space to investigate things, because I think your show at Milani Car Park kind of has like a bit of a utopian imagining of like a queer space, like if it was celebrated. And there is dystopian in there as well.
Like there's also
like,
two A-bomb two paintings of A-bombs, and one of them's called Muse Blissfully Awaits His Doom.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's, you know, there's
but
some...
something about painting it makes it seem fantastical as well.
Well, they're beautiful images, and there's something, you know, in bringing those images to life that is always going to be reparative and additive to a culture, as opposed to like just negative, like, because you're always adding in information where there's a historical like mainstream gap, I guess. So
Perfect for this
Lovely.
combo.
Let's
drop some atomic bombs.
Thanks
Yeah.
for coming.
Marisa, do you want to intro the topic?
We're talking about what art would look like and art making would look like outside of the competition. So I guess to start off, we need to acknowledge that we're kind of stuck in a competition to varying degrees at the moment. The way I think about it is that we're competing for limited opportunities where a lot of us are sole traders. We're often working by ourselves and competing by ourselves. We also have a kind of a social competition, because the way like art is produced right now, the modes of production right now, they include things like social hierarchies, they include things like social capital that define who gets to be visible, who gets platformed, things like that. So, you know, it kind of happens on like social and economic levels, the way I think about it. And I think about it in terms of like our economic ideals leak into our social interactions. And I think when we were talking about burnout last time, we kind of discussed a bit of that. Yeah, how our relationships can sometimes get instrumentalized in service of production, which, you know, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, this is an Imagine session, so we're going to try and
Yeah.
picture what it's like when it's not that way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not completely that way either. You know, we have uninstrumentalized moments, but at the same time, it's become really normalized, you know. The ways we operate have gotten really ingrained, and they're actually new. Like, they're actually, in terms of human history, they're so new. So, yeah, let's think about something different.
Before that, do we want to do any initial hot takes on the statement, is art a competition?
Is it?
Is it?
No.
Yeah. It is when profit is concerned, but I don't think it is innately a competition. I don't think art and how it serves a community is competitive, even on like a world stage. Outside, like, friendly competition, but then there's unhealthy, unfriendly competition, which is when you get a whole bunch of people who are really good at what they do, because here in Brisbane in particular, we have an amazing arts community full of fantastic artists, and you get all of these people that should just be able to show and work alongside each other so easily, fighting for scraps, fighting for gallery spaces that were almost storage lockers and stuff like that. So I think artists to artists are not always competitive. Definitely not like a lot of the people I surround myself with. They're lovely. They're delightful, wonderful, supportive, kind people.
So artists aren't competitive, but the industry is competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can get a bit competitive. I'm willing to put up my hand and say, like, sometimes when people have told me about a new opportunity they've got, I've had like the little green monster go like, oh my god, that means I failed, you know, which isn't the truth, you know, that's actually just an artificial construction of what's happened. But yeah, like you have those moments, and then in response, like sometimes if I tell someone about an opportunity I've got, I don't want to upset them, you know, so that tells me that there's something in the water socially that we're kind of swimming in, the way we have to, like, you know, not be too excited about the new thing that we just got, because it means something to the other person when there's so little opportunity.
That's still the question you get when you go to openings. It's like, what are you working on at the moment? I don't want to answer.
Yeah, definitely.
I've changed my way of asking that. I'm like, what are you up to?
Broaden it out.
And cartoons is a valid answer, I found.
Watching all of Nicolas Cage's movies.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I read a book called How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell a little while ago. It's so lovely. Yes. Oh, it's so good. But there's a quote in there about under capitalism we're all striving in parallel. And I'm like, that's the art world. When I was reading it, it's like we're striving in parallel instead of together, you know, or horizontally, or, you know, we're spreading or embedding or integrating, you know, we could be going in all these different directions, but we're just striving in parallel like this. It's it feels wasteful when I think about it like that, you know, and towards something.
I want to come back to what you said about like competition isn't innate in the art making, and like I understand it's meant to be a facetious sort of statement, like, is art a competition? But it also like erases a lot of history of what art making was prior to like Western colonial capitalism. Because art is like inherently a community collective activity to produce like something for the sake of it, to like and for the enjoyment of the community and for ritual and for ceremony and for all of those things, and it's only like this culture that has taken that idea and made it very
Bastardized it?
We've like individualized it. Yeah, I think like kind of started around like the Enlightenment, I think, where it was like, firstly we said art is a thing that an individual genius does, and it's like the pinnacle of human spiritual endeavor in a kind of masculine way. You know, it is kind of patriarchal when you think about it. Like, I kind of see things like parenting and mothering and caregiving as like creative, embodied, life-affirming, nurturing social activities that are also very productive, but that's not valued the same way as being an artist is, you know. Like, there's something about this Enlightenment thinking that forgets all these other kinds of life-affirming ways of being in society.
And I will say is that like art does like serve the individual, like in making art, like you know, it has an individual servitude in the way that it feeds back to you, like in a very enriching and nourishing but not always gentle way if things aren't working when you're making the sculpture, painting, video, installation, whatever. And yeah, like it does serve the community, and there is the individual amongst all of that. Like, the artist does exist as an individual, often like more quite isolated person, by choice, you know, like people become artists by choice. And yeah, like there is that interesting relationship between genius but then nourishment and like caring as well, because myself as an artist that pours a lot of labor into my works, I feel like I cherish and nourish the works up from the ground, in the same way that I feel when I garden, make terrariums and cook and that sort of stuff. It all feels like it's coming from a very similar place, and that to me is often what is then sensationalized when institutions like to look at artists, like to celebritize artists in a way. Like, I just came back from the UK a couple months ago, and they had Turner's painting palette in the Tate Britain. Now, I don't really actually like Turner's. Like, I don't get the hype around them. Like, I'm sure they're great for some people, but then to have the palette in there as well, it feels like that was just that object was probably important to him. It's not important for an institution except to boost the capital of those works in their own way.
I kind of love Turner's, but I also don't like them because of who they've made Turner into.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it's like, yeah, it's difficult, and it's all seems very sticky and woven together, and I don't fully know how we get out of it.
I like the words that are coming up though, like what is an art practice? The words that are coming up keep being like creative, embodied, caring, and I think like talking about what the role of an artist is, if those are the core things that art making is, and what you were saying about the individual, it is like a self-nourishing activity to like fill up your cup so that you can give back those like practices of being embodied, being caring, being creative, and like allowing other people the space to do that. And that's kind of the role it should play for society.
Well, it gets interfered with.
Yeah.
You know, like that process gets interfered with, like in all kinds of ways, like the administrative burdens of, you know, trying to get a grant, having to fit your practice into this project-based kind of modular thing, you know, the precarity that goes along with being an artist being really stressful, that kind of zaps creative energy. Like, yeah, I guess just a lot of things in the way the system currently works, they interfere with what most of us are doing as a nourishing activity, or at least something expressive, you know. It serves a purpose for all of us.
Yeah, and I think, you know, art pays off often, like, in hindsight. Like, that's kind of one of the roles of art. Like, it's always, like, it's of a time, and then it's using that, like, space in which it was made to work forward. And so often we don't, like, realize the importance of these things until we see them in an institution 30 years later or 100 years later, and it's like these are objects that are very, very, very important to, like, culture and how we feel. And to me, that's very much how I feel about cultural capital. Is it's about, like, what pays off, like, ongoingly in time outside of day-to-day life, whilst also being sort of forged out of day-to-day life in a strange way.
You know how you said they had the palette just in the gallery as an object? Like, to me, that kind of reminds me of, you know, the Margaret Olley studio that's in Tweed Regional Gallery. Like, they just have her studio as an installation.
It's gross,
and
right?
it's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of fetishizing the artistic process, you know? It's like, it doesn't have, like, anything, it doesn't have, I mean, her paintings, I think, are in another gallery, but...
they're, like, around it.
They're around it, but it's like, it is just kind of going like, oh, you could be, like, near this magical creativity that the person had when they were, like, working in this space without even looking at what the person made. Like, it's very weird to me. I feel like it's kind of similar to gentrification, where it's like, oh, you can be next to all the groovy artists. Like, it doesn't matter what they're making, but you could be, like, near it in their aura, and that's, like, really cool. You could be, like, so inspired, you know, and somehow, like, developers kind of get to profit off that, you know, just off our vibes without even caring about what we're making.
Yeah, and then they inevitably always end up ruining, like, this happens all across the world, all through history. They end up ruining the cool neighborhoods that are made cool because they're low income, and so artists, musicians, poets, actors move in, like Highgate Hill and West End and Annerley and all these sort of places, and then the White Linen Brigade, like, comes in with their boat shoes and ruins kind of everything, and then we have to, like, move out, like, you know.
Is that what people are doing when they put on an art prize?
Yeah.
Are they
Say more.
Are they trying to be near the aura of the artist? And do you mean like when
a law firm puts on an art prize, or another company that's got not much to do with art puts on an art prize?
Like a high school.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of get the cultural capital of doing that.
Yeah.
But their work has nothing to do with
It's also a tax write-off at some point, right? Like, you can also write it off as taxes, like donations or something, right?
Yeah.
I'll do a rant about it.
What else? Yeah, what else do they do? No?
Yeah,
Tell us about art prizes.
I'll go into that. I think it's too much, too soon. I'm going to stay in the space of chatting with you guys.
Can I add first, before we get into the rant, that not only is it a tax write-off, but when you consider the laws around royalties for the sales and resales of artworks, so it's only after the second resale, I believe, that artists start getting royalties. So you get these, you know, these people that buy an artwork, and that's really lovely. Thank you, everyone that buys artworks, it's important. But then when they end up donating it to an institution, which is never going to resell it, ever,
I mean...
very rarely.
I mean,
very rare.
I mean, like, MoMA's like one of the biggest art resellers. They just resell...
They're a private institution, though.
Oh, true.
Oh, sometimes it happens when a city council's, like, budget is fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can agree, often for the most part, a lot of artworks are going to just stay in the collection. And then they're just there, and then those objects have no ability. And this like, sorry if this sounds like gross capitalist stuff, but we all need to like survive under capitalism as well. It's like then the profit areas become extreme, like that's an avenue that is then removed and taken out of the artist's control for the most part.
Well, yeah, it's like
Should I just
artists
do my
aren't
rant now?
owning the means of production in this scenario, which is kind of actually the problem, not so much that it's become a commodity. Like, I wouldn't mind that half as much if artists were actually benefiting from that process happening.
And it is quite competitive to get into an institutional collective as well, right? A collection, I mean.
It's, I believe, very competitive or difficult for an institution to buy the work, but lots of institutions acquire work because the rich people that buy the work then just donate it to the collection and claim the new value of that work as a tax write-off. So work that they may have bought for $5,000 10 years later, when the artist is now starting to get better, and a work like that is now worth maybe $20,000 or $30,000, they can then donate that and claim $20,000, which then puts them $25,000 above.
I have no idea.
Yes. It's not based on how much you pay for it. It's based on how much it is appraised at the time. It has to be appraised, and like there are official things, and I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it as well. So I'm sure.
I know at commercial galleries there's like a price point for some works where you're like, someone will purchase this and put it in their home, and then there's other price points where it's like someone will purchase this to give it to an institution for the tax write-off, and those prices are vastly different.
Wow.
I know.
A whole world. There's a whole world out there that I don't know about.
Totally outside of artists making work.
Yeah. It's like, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Should I talk about why art prizes exist?
Yes.
Now?
Okay. Talk about art prizes.
I wrote a rant. But like, just as an advocacy group, most of what we do is like artist well-being, mostly mental well-being, sometimes financial well-being, because that feeds into mental well-being, Maslow hierarchy of needs and all that. But as well as that advocacy, we think it's important to like equip artists with some resources and context so that they can be informed in their own self-advocacy. So like we were talking about why art prizes exist. I think it's important to break down like why they exist for the different institutions that put them on. So like if it's a regional or a state gallery or another institution putting it on, often art prizes are kind of treated as a gap filler for an exhibition program. It lets them put on a large group exhibition pretty cheaply, because they often don't have to pay the same artist fees they would for a new development or a new commission, or for all the research and development that goes into that new artwork. And so cost wise there's that consideration, and they're also really good at meeting quotas for representing local artists and representing diverse artists and emerging artists. So if their exhibition program is light on that outside of the prize, that can be an incentive to put them on as well. And then if the institutional, like if it's a regional gallery and the art prize is acquisitional, we've kind of already talked about that. Like an art prize is a large PR campaign to make a big deal about the new acquisition. And by doing that, they also increase the value of the artist's name, which contributes to their new acquisition appreciating in value. So, and then like we're thinking about the other organizations that put on art prizes, like corporate and privately funded trusts. There's the being close to the artist aura element.
Yeah, get close to those outsiders.
And if they
the groovy outsiders who are gonna rub off on you just if you like hang out with them enough and live in their suburb. Okay, I'll stop.
These are the cool old bludgers.
Yeah.
Not the bad ones. These are the cool ones.
And if it's a corporation, they often set up a trust exclusively to run the art prize, and that's run as a not-for-profit trust. So again, like it's a zero cost initiative for them because it ends up being a tax write-off. And if it's acquisitional, again, it works very similar to the institution in that it contributes an appreciating asset. And it's also worth considering about who does this, because it's mostly law firms and architectural firms and property developers. And so something I find fascinating is how, like, what happens to the art after it's been in the prize. And often the trust will hold the collection if it's acquisitional, and then they'll lease it back to the offices or the new developments to exhibit the work, and the company will pay a fee to the trust in order to exhibit that work, which is also how it works if you acquire art for a self-managed super fund, because you can't gain value off your super assets while they're invested, but you can hold it in your super fund and then lease it back to your office or your house. And then pay into your super that way.
I don't know anyone who has supers.
I think I've got about $6,000 from when I worked in a supermarket in uni and in high school.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you know, it goes up. My hex stat goes up. You know, it's fine.
It's all
absolutely
fine.
fine. It's fine.
But yeah, why talk about that? Why should we know this? And I guess to me, it's like so much of the work you do as a project officer is like stakeholder engagement. It's making sure all the parties involved in a project are happy. And often artists' interests are the first thing that get compromised on because artists are so willing to compromise. And so I think it's worth knowing all these things to like equip yourself in your advocacy, because like you have leverage, and you can wield it. Like do things when you get involved in an art prize. Ask for an exhibition fee. If they're not providing an exhibition fee, ask why, because you're contributing labor and a product to a group exhibition at a major institution that's going to be consumed by the public, so you should be compensated for that labor. And like ask for your freight to be covered. Don't go out of pocket to be in an art prize. Like it is so simple to provide that support for artists. And there was like a I think it was Arts Hub that was ranking how ethical art prizes are based on this criteria. Yeah.
Cool.
How did they rank them? Like,
I can't remember.
okay. Was it like out of
We'll find
10
it, we'll
stars? Do you remember like the
No, I should look it up and I'll get back to it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a scale of like the ethics of art prizes, but I think one of the things you also didn't mention is that if you're paying to go in an art prize, you're like funding the art prize. You as an artist, you know?
Yeah, I think
Which
if there's
boggles my mind.
if there's an entry fee to be considered, it's definitely worth asking what that entry fee is used for, because like there's a whole bunch of, depending on how they're running the prize, there could be like very legitimate reasons that they need to cover like the server costs of uploading the artworks. But I think if an art prize is going to charge an entry fee, there should also be a mechanism for like an equitable entry in case it's out of your means, and that you could contact the organisation and
not
request
applied
it.
for things before, because I'm like, I don't have a spare $60.
That's why I've never applied.
Yeah.
I'm like, potentially, get paid nothing to make an artwork.
Yeah.
Or pay for groceries for a week.
Yeah.
I can't
100%.
afford art prizes. I'm broke as.
There are also some art prizes, like there's a pretty big one in Australia that I noticed a few years ago, because $50 is about the standard price for 50 to 65 is about the standard entry fee, and all of a sudden in 1 year there's one up to 150.
Wow.
$150.
And I was like, you could just say this prize is not for emerging artists. Like you can just say that. Like you don't need to like bully us
people.
with wealth.
The middle class art prize.
I'm never getting a job again after doing these live streams. But what's also fascinating is that when you there's quotas they have to fill for how many entries they get if the entry fee is contributing to the project budget, because they need to cover costs. And so like in the marketing strategy of the prize, you factor in like how many viable entries you're going to get, and then like targeting hobby artists.
That's,
Good job.
so art prizes are a racket, is what you're saying.
No. Obviously there's
Go on.
reasons artists still do art prizes. And we're not saying never enter an art prize again.
No. You
No,
gotta
I'm
do what
probably
you
gonna
gotta
enter
do.
some in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
You gotta do what you gotta
You
do.
still gotta do it.
But you can be strategic. You can be like, that one's too gross for me, I'll apply for the better one. You know, like,
And
No,
also,
no.
you're allowed to complain about it. Like, you know, you're allowed to also, like, yeah, a lot of the time you have to enter art prizes, but we can acknowledge that they're often not a lot of fun, and we can have a sook about it, and be like, you know, this is not right, and not ethical, and we still have to be part of it to a certain degree, but that doesn't mean it's okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, I'm not super interested in saying, like, labeling things ethical, unethical, like, good or bad. I think it's just worth knowing all of it so that you know how you're interacting with it and that you can advocate for yourself and get the most out of the experience as an artist. Because everyone else is doing that, so we should do that too.
You know what?
More.
I think I'm gonna go a bit the opposite way and say, like, the thing that I'm not interested in doing is blaming individuals for doing what they need to freaking do to survive
Of course.
in this system. But I think it's okay to be like, art prizes are bad. I think they're bad, personally. Yeah, I want to see different ways of structuring the art world that serves a different kind of sociality. You
To
know?
a certain extent, I also struggle with, like, what you're saying about blaming individuals. Like, I'm sorry, is my dog attacking you?
He's attacking me.
Puppy dog.
He's biting me.
You being a naughty puppy.
Oh, hey, you slept through the entire last live stream. Do it again.
Come here, Papa.
Come on.
Oh, no, straight back to Amelia. Get here.
Thanks everyone for the intermission. This is August, the Beaver emotional support dog.
It's very handsome.
Are you hurt?
I feel hurt.
I'm so sorry.
Bleeding. I'm not bleeding, but it hurts.
I'm sorry. Do you want ice?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Much like the art world, sometimes he's comforting and sometimes he'll just attack you.
That's a good analogy.
He's a puppy.
Yeah. I don't blame August. It's okay.
Yeah, individuals. I kind of see institutions as a collective of individuals, so I am very hesitant to assign blame to any institution that puts on an art prize, because I think they're doing it with great intentions as well. And we're all just like interacting in this messy system, trying to do our best.
Yeah, it's definitely the system that I'm looking at.
So what's the alternative to a competition?
Yeah, like, how can we make
Yeah.
these things a bit better?
Yeah.
you
Any
know?
thoughts?
Well, the obvious initial step is blind reviewing of the work. No names, no gender, no age, none of that stuff.
Wow.
I
As
really
the,
love the idea
Cool
of
idea.
looking at the artwork without a name attached to
Yeah.
it.
yeah, and also
I like that.
disclosure, obviously. Like, I think, speaking from like the people around me that also enter art prizes, a lot of the frustration can be when there is months and months and months leading up to an art prize, and everyone pays their $50 and everyone enters and that sort of stuff, and then you get to the 11th hour after, just before the shortlist is done or after the shortlist is done, and all of a sudden, the guest curator has been brought on and they bring with them a certain amount of like curatorial, what they want to do as an art prize, as a show rather, in this art prize. And that's fine, but it being transparent earlier on, because if you get a curator in that wants to curate a show about this or is more drawn to this, all the artists that don't do that kind of stuff probably wouldn't have spent their $50 and entered, and wouldn't feel tricked and trapped and frustrated by that happening.
So
you
an
know?
easy mechanism for that is to just announce the curator before entries open, and probably announce the judge before.
And
entries.
if there is going, and you know, have the curator like sit and think, do I want to do more of a themed show, or do I want it to be really open? And you know, trusting that they will be honest and think those things through. And if they are, to just say that. It's absolutely fine to have a show with a curatorial like bent, but it just has to be made clear from the very beginning.
I kind of like the curatorial bent to art prizes because it addresses the meritocracy fallacy, like, because
Meritocracy fallacy.
well, like, because art prizes aren't the best of the best. There's always going to be a subjectivity, and it serves you that subjectivity from the get-go. It's like it's a curatorial project as well as being really good art.
The risk then is always like certain more trendy things to curate about starting to like filter down even more through the
Or like
art.
people will make art to fit the trendy things.
Or maybe not, or maybe just certain art like gets favored more. I'm not saying it doesn't already do, like it probably already does, but I like an ungoverned art prize personally. I like no curatorial bend to an art prize, because to me what it's about is finding on the day or the days that we decided who was getting through, these are the ones we thought were the best. And we're putting them up, and we're going to arrange them in a way where they work together, and see what happens. Because it should, you're asking for a show of many individuals in a way when you're having an art prize, because it's many individuals putting together their sort of favorite piece or whatever they think, and I think it should represent that, you know, in a way. Be chaotic. Like there's nothing wrong in my mind with that.
Speaking of chaos, would you do like big art exhibitions, like all in sort of like 40-60 entries, or do you prefer the like pared back, highlighting fewer artists in a larger space, giving them like space to realize their work?
It's hard because part of me is always going to say, if you can fit more people and it's not going to be overcrowded, don't overcrowd it. But also sometimes it's better to see a video work projected on a whole gallery wall than opposed to, you know, a small screen. I guess it's about a culture of sharing both of those kinds of art prizes around, that we have some, and we do already, but I think we need more of it, like put into the art prizes that we do have. You know, like some really big chaotic ones, some more small pared back ones, and I think, you know, it might require more funding for the big chaotic ones, because you're gonna have to pay more artists.
Yeah, I was gonna say if artist fees become this, artist fees should be the standard.
Yeah.
So if you do big exhibitions, that's a funding consideration. I've never entered an art prize.
I entered 13 in 1 year.
Whoa.
When I was in art school, and an idiot and
Did
ego
you have to,
in
like,
second year, and
budget
I got it
for that at the start
I
of the
mean,
year?
I was living with mum and dad at the time, and so yeah. I got into none of them. I got into none of them. So, and I think I added up, and it was about like $600 I'd spent on art entries. And then the following year, I sent a piece down to the Archibald to be judged, and because the Archibald apparently, like, the Art Gallery of New South Wales time warps into the 1800s for that short time of the year. You actually have to send your work down to them to be viewed.
You do, yes.
Yeah. Which also means that people write serial numbers in black Nico pen on the back of the frames that you paid Frame McCull $200 to make for sometimes. So yes, I've sent down twice because one time that's my frame, which is fine, you can't see it, but still.
It's an artifact of not getting into the art.
To freight it down, and you know that's not too bad, and I can claim that on tax, and I do, but it's still an expense, as well as your $50 entry fee, I might add.
Yeah.
So.
And framing the work and getting it looking schmick before you ship it down to.
I didn't frame the first one I entered because it was big.
Yeah.
I framed the second one, but not the first one.
I think like working out how the art industry worked in terms of art competitions is when I got really disheartened with my practice, because I think coming out of honours in the university thing, I did like strategically look at how I would structure an art practice to like turn it into a career, and you essentially have to like budget for it like it's a business. Like these are the development costs in order to be considered for prizes, in order to like build your CV to get to the next step of your career. And like it just wasn't feasible. There was no way I would have ever been able to cover the costs of running an art practice that way. And if competitions are your only mechanism to establish a career, that cuts a lot of people out.
I mean, it is a small business. You know, the way we all have to be is as a small business, and it's not particularly enjoyable. And I'm very guilty of hurting my like life to cater to the art practice, which I'm not necessarily like sorry for, because it was a thing about priorities. But I think thinking about it, it's like, oh no, like I should still be able to like do the things I like and sustain this. But it is hard, especially with rising cost of living and all of that stuff that we all talk about. But also, I think instead of letting an art prize dictate your practice, it's better to, I guess, invert it a little bit. And so find it, because there are a lot of art prizes in Australia, finding the art prizes that already start to suit your art practice, because you can get them all at like artprizes.org or whatever they are, and just doing like 3 or 4 of them, or 13 if you really want, and just marking those out and being like, okay, these are the ones I'm going to enter this year because I don't have to compromise my practice at all or very little to do that. But that's also not possible for all practices. Like, I'm coming from the position of mostly painting, and most art prizes, I believe, are mostly painting and drawing prizes. So, you know, there's another edge to that as well. There are some open calls though where they take everything. Yeah, down in Melbourne, there's I think 2. I think I've been in one of them. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, actually.
So you do pay your like $50 to enter, but you're guaranteed to be in the show, which is nice.
Yeah.
Oh, like a salon de failure, everyone gets in sort of deal.
I mean, I never got into the salon de failures. My secondary failing. But yeah, I think it was the 40 by 40 prize and I entered.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lethbridge does one of those, the Lethbridge 10,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Do you enjoy art as a competition? Does the competition add an extra bent or like an extra edge for you?
I think when it does, I then feel bad about it because I realise it's maybe coming from an unhealthy place. I like when I'm hanging out with my friends who are artists and we're joking around and having a go at each other and like having a friendly sort of like competitive bent, but like it's not actually competitive, it's just fun and kind of getting everyone up to date and seeing how our practices are clicking and not clicking together and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about like the banter between artists that feels okay, but the actual competition like comes from not a great place? Like,
well, it's on our terms when it's artist to artist or you know, creative to creative. When it's on an institution's terms, it's like having a middle manager, you know, involved. And
We've kind of gotten a bit far away from the
Oh yeah.
visioning session, but I think that's a nice point to come back to, like
Yeah.
embodying what a better art world would feel like. Like it would be on your terms, and
Yeah.
like
And some competition would still exist in that.
yeah,
But it's like your own terms will actually be more around like I imagine if like the profit model was actually owned by artists and like if the means of production were actually like controlled by artists, and so you know, the kind of interpersonal competition we engage in would change if we engage in it at all. Like it would probably net go down, and then you'd just have a nice kind, you know.
You can always start by just like turning the scales. That's like you have you know, maybe one artist on a panel of 5 judges for an art prize.
What if it was all artists?
Or just flip it.
What if artists
we have
were the judges and the people who put on the art prize?
like,
They get selected from a panel of artists.
yeah, exactly. Like it's peer run.
how would you choose those artists without
know.
competition?
maybe artists apply for it. Maybe it's if they want to be involved in it. You know, maybe it's if they want to do something like that. I mean, you've always got to have
First
a
five.
non-artist. I think you've always got to have.
Maybe it's a collective, like it's run by a collective, and then
Yeah,
that collective
co-op art
chooses who the
prizes.
judges are each time, and then you know, like all the people in the collective are the judges, and you have the same judges every time, and that's okay because it's artist run and it's just what they do. It's how they want to practice, you know.
So I'm gonna keep going with the visioning session of like, what if art prizes were co-ops and run by artists? How would you feel getting rejected for an art prize from your peers?
Yeah, look, I would if the art world was run by collectives in cooperative business structures, I don't know how many prizes we'd have. I think it would be like a whole different way of like creating art.
Probably be more shows.
Because I
less
guess it would be
prizes.
like
group
the
shows,
definition of what's valuable would kind of implicitly change if we were doing it that way, and it would become more about what the artists care about and what the people in the community around the artists care about. And that would be the criteria for success, instead of how much social capital do they have and how much money can I make off this thing, and how, you know, it would actually just be, it would be different. It would be different, and I feel like it would be much more kind of embedded and localized. Like I imagine it, like different collectives putting on shows, it would be kind of the same as like you visit a new city, you want to know what the collectives are doing because you've heard that this collective in Dublin does this really cool different style, like has this really cool way of doing stuff, or they're thinking about this philosophy more, and then you go visit a different place, they're doing something different, you know. And what they're doing in community is really cool, and you can just walk in and you can meet the artists and you can like all talk about what they're doing, and they're all working together. Even if they have individual practices, it would just be more kind of more embedded, more grounded, more like.
Have you guys seen the free graffiti wall that's in Greenslopes now?
No.
In the big park?
Cool.
No.
I was just thinking about that, and I was like, you know, there is a place maybe in a community institution way to have like that, but for artists to like hang and display work for a week, for 2 weeks, and move it on, change it out, and to just have open walls for people to open walls in inverted commas. Obviously, it's not a wall-based work, but you know, that's maybe a thing that I could see that happening. That would be nice. You know, it'd be nice if Goma had a little, well, not a little actually, a big people's gallery.
That would be amazing. A
you know,
people's gallery.
Yeah, an actual
gallery. I love that.
Yeah, and you know, you sign up and you go on the waiting list, and after a certain amount of time, it's like, okay, it's now your time.
I reckon that would get like amazing visitation as well. I could see the Goma's People Gallery
absolutely.
being really fun to go to.
Oh, and I'm sure there would be a lot of crap that went up on the walls, but like without wanting to like sledge institutions too much, institutions already get a certain amount of crap up on their walls being chosen by people because people have different tastes. So you know, you sometimes just let it be, you know. It doesn't have to be perfect every time.
You know what I like to think about sometimes is what if curators were a bit more like social workers? Like,
Tell
what
me
if
more.
what if like instead of applying for a thing and having someone in the position of an expert select you or not select you, what if you're like, okay, I'm gonna go visit Tom, the curator at the IMA, because I've got this really awesome idea. So I just like see if Tom's about. Yeah, cool. I'll like drop into the IMA, talk to Tom, and Tom's there to be like, wow, okay, that's a great idea. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Let's see how we can get it going. Let's see how we can help you. And the person is not a gatekeeper, they're a facilitator in that way.
I think a lot like social workers would probably need more curators if it operated on that model.
Yeah, or what if those people were just artists as well? Like, maybe we don't even need curators in this model anymore, and it's all just, you know, it's just creative people.
But what about
You
the
know,
people who
doing
really love art but don't know how to make it?
You can.
Yeah.
You know, or that's your practice, you know.
Yeah.
It's like in the same way that I think of community development as a part of my art practice. Like, yeah, it can just be part of your thing. I mean, there are so many collectives out there doing just social kind of stuff, you know.
Well, that sounds like a really good idea for an RE.
Yeah.
You know, or
With
that,
that much
or like
spare time,
or a small like org, right?
Yeah.
Where people can come in and be like, this is my idea for an exhibition,
Yeah.
and then like you go, that sounds
Yeah.
great, but this is this and this and this, and you like work through them as if similar to social work.
I'd
Yeah,
like
and
it
I
if it
suppose-
wasn't an RE and it was a small org, because I
Yeah.
feel like you should get paid to do that.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
But that's the thing. Like, your only way to become a small org is to have an RE.
So yeah, like I guess people can like start the things that we want to see happen.
Yeah.
But I'm also just really interested in like,
But why don't you
what if
start that
if
thing?
like that model of like you just go into an institution and they're like there to help you. What if that was just the norm? Like, what if the industry was actually structured that way instead of this like triangular way? You know?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I-
Like, it would be
no.
cool.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but we have to lead by example. We have
Yeah.
to prove that this model functions and works,
Yeah.
because institutions already are like on a nice edge. Like if their funding gets pulled, they're fucked.
Yeah.
They just stop existing.
Yeah.
Like we seen
And-
it with QAA. QAA had like millions of, well, not millions. They had like hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding, and then it just fell apart randomly one year.
Yeah.
And then there goes all the art prize and like all their like union work, all their like art facilities.
Because I don't know the history of this, but like was QAA supported adequately by the government when that happened?
Oh, I'm going to sidebar and say QAA is the Queensland Artists Alliance, which
Yeah.
used
Yeah.
to be the artists union in
Yeah.
Queensland.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking like what if the system supported these small organizations through these moments
Yeah.
as well? You
Yeah.
know.
See, I don't
Because
know.
of course it can work. You know.
Yeah,
like, it
but
can
we
totally
need
work.
we need to prove it. So we
Yeah.
need to prove by example. It's a research thing, right? We have to go out there. We have to be like, this is a system of art that can work,
Yeah.
and I'm going to prove it by slowly doing an RE that becomes an org, and people go, oh, that's actually a really good model. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what model we're running off of for the art world right now, but it's like started in Europe somewhere.
Mm.
And
It's
it-
largely
it-
based on a commercial model.
It
you know,
is like the white walls.
Yeah.
And like one work,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very very much a commercial model.
Mm.
But it's like I'm pretty sure it started in Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's just we've just like copy and pasted it because we're like this works. White walls, work in the center, 155 up, you know,
Yeah.
spaced apart evenly, and that's who's going to copy and paste that forever and ever and ever. And it's the same with governance.
Yeah.
And we need to like actually show and be radical and go, this is like a radical new way of how to run the art world,
Yeah.
and I can prove it by doing it
Yeah.
myself.
We touched on it in the burnout chat, but what you were saying about like institutions running on a knife's edge,
Yeah.
because the funding model is project based, there is no
Yes.
funding to consider these alternatives.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
even
They
if
can't
you
risk it.
even if you think there's a better way to run your org, you're pumping out an annual exhibition program,
Yeah.
and all of the money goes towards that. There's no money, there's no time and no space to like embody what an alternative would feel like in order to like give it the thinking and breathing room to execute it well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because there's certain metrics as well that they have to go. We have this many people come through. We have like these certain things that we need to do. So we need to lead by example. We can't just demand that institutions change. We need to show them that this thing.
I still
leads
want to
to-
demand that institutions change.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do both. Let's
Yeah.
do both.
Yes. No. Like doing it ourselves
No, we have
is
to
a
model
demand.
it.
It is
Yeah.
going. This thing is not equitable,
Yeah.
and we're gonna prove that it can be fixed.
Yeah.
I think also, like, not to like harp on, but if there was a universal basic income,
Yay!
if there was a universal basic income, then things can be driven by just individual wants. So it's like then
Yeah.
you can be your like hybrid artist, curator, social worker, or artist, botanist, whatever you want to be, because with a universal basic income you like are able to just be
Yeah.
like
You're not
Yeah.
at all harping on
like
No,
the
it's
UBI
like my favorite
segment.
topic ever.
Yeah.
Is a
But I
prerequisite.
sometimes get worried that like I'm becoming repetitive because I'm like, this would fix it, but it literally would fix so many things.
And
It's
then-
my answer
and
to
then people are like, but how will we find the money for the universal basic income? And
Like,
also not
tax
to
people.
tax the billionaires. And like, not again, I know it is something that has been said a million times, and I do not want it to lose meaning and value to say tax billionaires, but please just tax the billionaires.
Yes.
They pay nothing. I
Yes.
worked in a supermarket for 6 years and earned less than $20,000 and paid more tax than all of these billionaires did, and that is not fair.
Yeah.
It is not fair.
It is
No.
not fair, because if we took all of their money, put a wealth ceiling in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
say no more than $200,000 a year, everything else we're taxing at 99% or something. So you know what? They're still gonna have lavish, amazing lives.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like that's the truth of it. It's like their idea of being almost broke is our idea of being wildly successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if their accountant saw my like bank balance and how often my money in that comes in, they would have
Yeah.
a heart attack. And that's probably the same for all of us.
Yeah, I would love to see the whole art industry advocating for this thing, because I think what just happened in the conversation is what happens a lot, where it's like, the system needs to change. No, like, you need to do it yourself if you think the system needs to change. Oh my god, but I already have so many things to do and I'm already so stressed and like I don't have the capacity to do this by myself. And then you got like this whole,
I'll help you.
it's a whole circle. Thanks, Amelia.
That's the thing, we
It's
do
a whole
have to
kind of,
help
like,
each other.
cycle
you know?
where it's like we need space, like we need a safety net and we need some space in our lives, like otherwise these things are kind of unfeasible. And a UBI is like a really awesome practical policy change that would genuinely be transformative. Like it would be
Like it would change this country within the space of I would say weeks.
yeah
Like the world would change.
Yeah.
Like the culture would change dramatically.
I think that's what they're afraid of. Don't say
Yeah,
that, and they won't give
yeah.
us one.
But
Well,
also,
but-
like, one of the cruelest things about like the capitalist system that we exist in is that it creates jobs just so there is a bum in a seat.
yeah.
It's not that job actually needs to exist.
What blew my
At
mind
all.
is that it also creates poverty, because poverty needs to
Exist
like,
so that more jobs
Yes.
can be
Yeah.
created. That
like the
suffering is
inflation,
integral to profit. Suffering is integral to their system, and it's not okay anymore.
Yeah,
guys.
like inflation, the inflation crisis we're in. We're actually gunning to increase unemployment at the moment,
Yeah.
because unemployment is what brings down
Yeah.
inflation. Because if people are desperate to work, you can charge less for labor and produce products for cheaper. And so we need to like hit a point of unemployment right now.
But also-
The RBA
also
said
the-
we had to get rid of 140,000 jobs
Wow.
to save the economy.
And those are
That's-
people.
It's
Yeah.
so
Oh, that's
Also-
the RBA.
And
That's the
like,
RBA.
and the government's all like, oh, dole bludgers, they're like so lazy and horrible.
Yeah.
It's like you're creating them.
Yeah.
Like you literally need
They're like,
them.
get a job, and it was like, well, the RBA is trying to get rid of jobs.
Yeah. I take comfort in knowing I'm doing my personal part
Yes.
to bring down inflation.
Yeah.
But
Yes, exactly. Anyone watching on Centrelink, you're very important. You're very important for the economy.
And speaking of the UBI, if everyone has money,
who will fix the fridges?
who will fix the fridges?
I've fixed a couple. I'll do it. I haven't fixed them good though. Maybe my housemate Tristan's much better at fixing them.
I think the joke is like, if everyone could have a universal income and be an artist, wouldn't everyone become an artist? Do you guys think everyone would want to be an artist?
No, because it's not that great. Like, don't get me wrong, it's great. It's what I choose to do. I love it. But what kind of psycho loves to sit in their studio listening to podcasts late into the night when they could be with their partners or their friends or just at home like watching the new season of Stranger Things or whatever, and it's like, no, I have to render this arm. It's like, no, of course not. It's like, it's I love it.
I was
'cause
like
it
really
suits
hard
me.
as well. There are loads
And
of things you
so
can
easy
do
work.
and far
and
less
so
hard
boring
work. Yeah.
sometimes, and sometimes it just like, doesn't work out. It's like, oh, fucking kill. Like, Jesus. But you know, I love it. I choose to do it, but I don't think.
Yeah.
I think once
We're
people.
in no danger of everyone becoming
No,
artists
no.
once we get a UBI.
No, oh my god.
UBI for artists.
I mean, I would also love the entitled to the same level of cultural success as others, because some things, depending on time and certain kinds of practice, are always going to be more valuable to a community. But you have to let the community decide that as well. But also, like, just leave. The great thing about a UBI is that, you know, it introduces something which is really important to me, and that is leaving people the fuck alone. Like, this is something that this country really struggles with, just being fucking sticky beaks. Like, from real estate agents to Centrelink workers, like, it is annoying. You get people with universal basic income, let them do their own thing. Let them do their own thing. And, you know, like, money's all made up. So, like, you know.
I think it amazes me how much more your life is surveilled when you're on a lower income.
Oh.
Like, even just being a renter, like, if you're not the property owning class, you're no longer entitled to have a space where you're not being observed. Like, I get so much anxiety at 3 monthly inspections. I'm like, I must be a standard of human that is okay to have property.
I've stopped cleaning when they come over. Like, I'll do the chores.
Yeah.
But if I've got a pile of dirty laundry that's overflowing out of my laundry basket because I'm busy, do you know what? I'm busy. And
You have to render that arm.
yeah. And also, sometimes the people doing these inspections are like the newbies at the real estate office. So they're like a hungover 19-year-old that, you know, is getting paid minimum wage. They don't care.
They don't care. In fact, their job probably doesn't need to exist,
Yeah.
and they could probably be an artist if they wanted to.
Yeah, for sure.
If they had a UBI.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
doing anything useful.
And I, just
Yeah.
also as a personal thing, when we talk about like universal basic income, I'd like to preface my position on the word basic is lavish. Because I think this idea that every
lavish income.
well,
Basic
I think like no, like when we think about basics, we think about bread, flour,
Yeah.
like, you know, that sort of stuff.
We're asking for circus
Yeah.
on top of bread.
Yeah, I think it is a right to a person to have enjoyment in their life. So I think a basic income has to include a certain amount of money accounting for luxury.
Yeah.
For, you know, nice bottle of wine, nice hardwood table, nice whatever you want. Like, that has to be part of it too, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of surveillance, like, you know, like,
What are you digging for?
food cards and all of those sorts of things that they always try and introduce. Like, the amount of judgment that's placed on lower income people and what they choose to spend their money on is wild. And like choosing to spend it on an art practice and entering an art prize would be considered like irresponsible.
Yeah. It was like how many rich people are just like sitting on their backsides while their money makes more money
Oh, the
over
leisure
there
class,
and doing
yeah.
like nothing.
Those
Like,
lazy dog lodges.
yeah. But you know, have you seen that discourse around like fully automated luxury gay space communism?
Oh, nice.
Tell us
No.
more.
Thought you were just going to say luxury communism. I was like, I love it. And now it's gay space. I'm like,
no,
hell yeah.
like it's just this kind of like utopian kind of like science fiction exploration that people are doing around like, okay, what if like we fully automated all the bullshit jobs and then everybody could just like kind of
Do whatever they
chill
want.
out and be in a recreational mode in all of this beautiful like excess that we've created.
Kind of like
Fully
Star Trek.
automated luxury gay space communism.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's lovely. Like you can just look it up, but people have visioned for these amazing worlds, and I love it. I think it's cool.
To like drill back down into it, because that is a utopia.
Yeah, that's the utopia. That's the
I think
it's a vision. But you always, utopias aren't really meant to be fully attained. They're just like a thing to have to use
They're
some
a
direction.
guide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think when you present those ideas, like those utopian ideas, people come down to a practical thing, like of who will fix the fridges, and I think that is like to take it back down to those base levels. Asking questions like that seems to really underestimate the potential of like societies and communities in collaboration and collectives. Like if a fridge needs to be fixed, it will get fixed. Like someone will learn how to fix the fridge, and the fridge will get fixed because we need a fridge. Like there is a certain amount of mechanism in a society where it wasn't a capitalist structure that we would do the work that needs to be done so that we could all attain the base level.
Also,
and
when-
that's not a ridiculous thing to say. Like that might happen.
And we're not advocating for like anti-industrialism in that we're gonna burn like maintenance like books and stuff like that. Like surely it will be written down somewhere or on YouTube from the before times, like how to fix fridge. But also there are gonna be people that want to design new fridge. They'll have the knowledge, but also like this is the thing that they
we're
bring
gonna
up.
have fully automated self-fixing fridges.
Yeah.
In the future.
It's like people like these arguments are always brought up as a way of like straw manning and because it's like, oh, if you can't tell me every little teeny tiny facet of how this new system could work, then you are wrong. And like that is expecting like a little individual like me who went to art school to figure out a lot of the hard details in that moment. And it's like gets back to that culture of like surveying and being a busybody that is around. Just go with it. Someone will fix the fridge, as you
I guess
said.
the practical thinking of like explain to me each and every little bit about how this will work before I'll agree with you. I think it's like that survival mechanism again. Like if you gun for it and it doesn't work, what happens? But that also operates on the presumption that what we're doing now is great and working well, which is not a correct presumption.
No.
I think like when people question you about these things, it often reveals more about them than like what you're actually saying. Like the idea that like who's going to fix the fridge? I guess there's a really big assumption under that, which is that people are fundamentally lazy if you give them what they need to survive and they don't have to like work for it, which that's an assumption. Like that's not the case. I guess like other things around you know how you mentioned the myth of meritocracy before. Like true meritocracies like don't exist. Like you're always going to have, there's always going to be like a birth lottery going onwards. Like you're always going to be affected by things outside of your control. It's like who's your family, what country are you born in, who was your best friend at school, like all of these like influences shaping who you are. Like there is no pure meritocracy either. And I think people kind of go like, but what if, but wouldn't things be unfair if we didn't try and like have this meritocracy that they think means things are fair right now, because people who have the skills and hard work get the rewards, and it's like that doesn't even happen right now anyway. Meritocracies are fake, you know, but we're so like ingrained with these assumptions. So yeah, I guess I just want to say that the questions often reveal assumptions that are untrue, like that need to be unpicked, I guess, on a societal kind of level.
And like I'm sure some people would choose to be lazy, but that's also their choice. If that's what they want to do, why is that an issue? Leave them alone.
They don't affect you at all.
Exactly. I've been it's
I really love this.
Yeah, leave people the fuck alone.
And leaving people alone economy.
Seriously. Like, obviously, like, reach out if you think someone needs help, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But this, like, culture of being in each other's business is so toxic in this country, I feel. And yeah, I just think, you know, if somebody, in the same way that, like, if it is my dream to live my life this way, it is other people's right and other people's dream to live their life mostly their ways. And very few people, as we know, like, would actually choose to be lazy.
Yeah,
but
every
also,
UBI trial has shown the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, every UBI trial says if you have, like, what you need to live, then you have more freedom to find a job that you really want. You have more freedom to, like, spend more on the things you like, you know? It's
but also, like,
generative.
what
it's
is
a
a
very
job?
generative thing.
What is a job? What is labour? You know? And, like, all these things which we do not, like, economically support in society, like artists, arts workers, artist-run initiatives and advocacy programs.
And also parents. People, custodians of country.
Pet carers.
Pet carers, pet carers of all kinds. Like, activists, like all of these people who are engaging in labour that's very, very valuable, very, very life-affirming, very creative as well. And, like, UBI would look after all of these people.
Oh, this, like, neoliberalist fear of the welfare state in any kind of form, even if it's just, like, a program for giving living wages to artists, is so, like, indicative of that, like, neoliberalist, like, thinking around, oh, well, I worked hard for my money, and if they give people money that they didn't deserve because they didn't work as hard as me, then society will collapse, and that's not fair on me. Why did I have to do that? And it's all so messy and really full of a lot of not helpful and healthy emotions and prejudices and biases, and that's okay to have those. We all do, but then you've got to, like, move on from them.
Well, like, utopian imaginings, like the people who can't leave you the fuck alone. I think it's because they would desperately love to be left the fuck alone. Like, they bought into the rat race of, like, I had to work so hard and I had to do all these things where I had to compromise my, like, true embodied centered self in order to survive. And so how dare you, like, model another approach, because I can't have that.
And that they feel like that invalidates their experience.
For people who are older, they would have to grieve existence of having done the opposite of that. Like, that's a really hard process to go through.
Fuck it would break me if I was in that position. I think I would be very upset.
They need support for that. That's why you need therapy. You know, like, because it is there is going to be a grief process involved for some people around these kinds of changes.
And the truth is that, you know, like, as slow as Australia does move, like, it's gonna happen eventually. It's whether we let it happen in our lifetime or in 200 or 300 years, you know. And it's like, you know, even 10 years ago, the idea of a 4-day work week would be unthinkable. And now how many large corporations are moving to 4-day work weeks, even though the science has been, you know, pretty consistent since the 90s, I believe, that a 4-day work week is as productive as a 5-day. But just that idea of losing that one day was so terrifying to...
Managers want to be controlling. Managers want to be managing. You know, I actually also just want to come back to that idea of, like, hard work for a second, because Yeah, at the moment I'm doing this research work around the neoliberalisation of universities, and I'm reading all of the strategic plans from all the universities in Australia. And when they're talking about like diversity and inclusion and stuff, they're like, we want everybody who has the will and drive to succeed and the passion to succeed to be able to succeed at our university. And I'm like, okay, you think it's fair because you're basing it on the merit of having like passion and drive and a hard work ethic, but like what kinds of things interfere with your work ethic? Let's have a think. Mental health issues, poverty, trauma, freaking like
lack of accessibility,
the values of your parents. Like, yeah, exactly. Like it's affected by so many things. It's not that's not a meritocracy. Like that, even then that's not a meritocracy. You know what I mean? Yeah, like whether you have a hard work ethic or not is largely not in your control. I mean, pretend it is.
A lot of universities now have like an equity department, where like they've kind of acknowledged the fact that meritocracy doesn't exist, and equity looks like, you know, the start line of the race being different according to how far you could run, because then everyone will be like putting in the same amount of effort. Like it's okay to start with the same tools that somebody else would have, and if you need help getting those, that is okay. Like but I think it's something the art world doesn't do at all, like in terms of an equitable start to being able to participate in this community.
Well, how do we start that? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah.
You don't have to. You know.
I like the model you guys were talking about where you could like just drop in with curators.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
And you can do it on a person-to-person basis. Like if you know that person, if you're friendly with that person, you can organize meetings with that sort of people. But like these sort of people aren't as accessible.
I actually do have a proper answer for you.
Okay, good. Okay, nice. That's nice.
No one's saying anything. Does anyone?
If
you're
you
in the
have
chat,
ideas, like tell us your
chat.
ideas, because
Because
it does strike
how
me
did
like.
you get your start in the art world?
I was just going to say, to answer your question of like how we would do that equity in the art world. I think we've taken identity politics and built a persona around being a very inclusive, diverse community, accessible community, all of those things. But the art industry doesn't address class politics or poverty, and it's like the identity politics is a band-aid fix for the class politics, which creates the inequity in the first place. So like if the art industry even just acknowledged that Australia is structured in a class.
And the fact that like this structure, it's like, okay, we're going to diversify this structure of producing and presenting art, but it's like this structure doesn't suit so many people. Like firstly, it's like a Western structure for one thing, you know. Like, why should everyone have to just, like, fit into that? Like, why don't we change it to suit... Like, why don't we have a diversity of structures in the art world as well as just diversity in the one structure of the art world?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like
maybe you still have, like, a GOMA and an IMA or something, and then you have a bunch of the ones with the social worker curators, and then you have some, like... Indigenous run ones that have their own governance systems that are supported by the government. Like the government recognises and supports like different ways of structuring that
do you think
organisation, you know.
Do you think in that model it would still like be prestigious to show at the GOMAs and the IMAs amongst all the social worker operatives? Like how would we still have the same concepts of success, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to shift those things because I do think, like, I'm not like abolish GOMA or anything, but GOMA does play a big role in the financialization of a city, of our city. Like, it's really a way to show how much cultural capital we have as a city and to be like, hey, come over here and invest in us because we're like cool and groovy, you know. So I would like to see bit less of that. I'd like to see as much money going into GOMA as like going into other ways of doing stuff. Yeah, and like what if Goma changed into more of a service organisation than a cultural capital organisation? It would be very interesting. What would that look like?
I think, like, you know, some, like the arts precinct of Brisbane, that sort of South Brisbane area, like there's a lot of control around the parklands there, and it's like you can't even like go and like just like wheel in a fake wall and put some artworks up on the lawns of Goma.
Our
because
cultural precinct is one of the most surveilled
South
places
Brisbane,
in the whole
I think
city.
South Brisbane,
it's crazy.
I think South Brisbane is the most surveilled place in the whole southern
Can I be
hemisphere.
a nerdy
I have
law
seen
student
a
for
lot
a
of
second?
racist
Yeah.
shit happen there, by the way.
Well, South Bank is owned by a
seen,
private
like-
company.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
about to get into this.
Yeah.
So don't
Yeah.
steal
It's
that
owned by
from
a
me, I'm so sorry.
corporation!
So South Bank's a private corporation and it's super fascinating because it was public land. So they had to introduce a new piece of legislation that established the trust that gave the powers to the corporation.
The law works for capital, not the people.
And then like how our cultural precinct is legislatively structured is also fascinating. Like individual pieces of legislation, like government acts, parliamentary acts, establish each of the trusts for each of the cultural institutions. So like they set the rules of how Quag Goma has to be governed as an organisation. So like that's why I'm studying law and still working in the arts, because like if you want to do the utopian, how would all these things work better, you're probably going to have to change legislation at some point.
No, I'm all for changing legislation. Hell yeah. Yeah. I think you can do it all the different ways. It's like you can be like building from the ground up and at the same time advocating for a system to change at the top. And, I mean, at least in social work, that's what we learn to do, because we work with individuals. You know, we're sitting there in an office and an individual comes in and you have to help them as an individual, but it's kind of, they say it's like it's not a critical practice to just be working on this stuff with individuals. You also need to be advocating for the system change at the same time. So they teach us to be holding both.
We've talked a lot about like these big ideas for the future and legislation change, but I'm always like very interested in like what an individual, because I think a lot of artists in particular like being just by themselves, an individual. They're drawn to that kind of lifestyle. So like maybe we could go around the room and just say like, what is an idea for like something that someone could do tomorrow or within the next few months to help support and like build towards these ideas. Mine would just be like have a show at your house if you can, at your share house, and you know, meritocracies don't exist, put your friends in it, like, you know. Well, seriously, like more space means more like equality probably. So yeah, have a show under your house, have an open studio, put your friends in a little show with no bureaucracy that you organize off the books and that kind of stuff.
I think my answer would come back to like what we were saying about how you define success in the new models. If there were more institutional models, like would Goma still be the goal? Like, and I think something you can do is like do a little embodiment exercise of what actually feels good and successful and nice in your body. Because I even think if we had all these different models of how institutions would operate, success wouldn't necessarily be having a show at Goma if having a show at Goma was an unpleasant experience for your sense of self. Like if you were more nourished as a person going to the arts org that was run by social worker curators who treat you as like an individual client, then redefine your sense of success to be like, it was successful to participate in that project because it made me feel okay and good and whole, and now I can go back and give out that good wholeness.
Yeah, I love that. Is the question one thing we can do right now?
Yeah, or
okay.
short term.
Short term. Okay, you know what I'm really interested in? What if like every artist went and checked out all the submissions to the National Cultural Policy by all of our local arts institutions and saw how many of them advocated for artists in their submission to the National Cultural Policy, and ask your local arts institution, like, why didn't you like advocate for a UBI? Like, why didn't you, you know, because, you know, we all know these people, like, they're all our community. Like, yeah, let's like get the conversation going. What if every institution who submitted to that thing asked for a UBI? How different would the outcome have been?
Darcy stole my answer.
Okay.
But I'm going to give you another answer. It's go to a show for someone that you don't know. If no one you know is going to be there, you don't know the artist, you have no idea, go to that show and just look at the art and just appreciate that art.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people go to shows because they know someone's going to be at that show that they can talk to and they know the artist.
Remove the names from the exhibitions that you go to.
Exactly.
Yes,
And just
so
go and see some art and be surprised.
Yeah.
And I think that will lead to a broadening of our understanding of community, and become more peaceful, because then we're not going. The popular people aren't the only people that are getting lots of people at their shows. We're all supporting each other without this like want or need to go, I need to go to this show because this person's there and they're going to give me this opportunity that's going to lead me to this place. You know? So
like personally divesting from these capitalisms that are living in our ways of socially relating and ways of operating.
I
love that. I'm all about that.
Yeah. Well, if all we have is ourselves in our own bodies, sometimes, like, outside of capitalism, like, we can make, like, the initial choice. It's like, even if I cannot change the world, I can change this, like, bit of it, right, in this moment. And that's what I think, you know, is important, short term and then long term, obviously.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Yeah,
we didn't even have to bring up UBI. You were like ready for it.
Yeah, because I want to just be able to make art, and I know like I'm still like, you know, an emerging artist, but like I would just like love to be able to do that, and I love my jobs.
You should be able to.
And I do love the like arts worker and like support worker jobs I do, but you know, sometimes it would just be nice to, you know, do my thing. You know?
He left the fuck alone.
Yes. Honestly, yes.
Did we want to say any more things? We've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh my god.
Hour and 32 have been live. There was something I was going to say, but I've totally forgotten what it was because now I'm on the spot. Yeah. I don't know. Is art a
just
competition?
want to invite everyone to imagine different things, like,
and give yourself permission.
It doesn't have to be like the ones that we said tonight, but like actually, it's kind of a practice. You know, it doesn't come naturally for some reason, probably because we don't see it happening very often, but it can be really good. Really like it. It helps you clarify how messed up things are right now, actually.
I think you have to give yourself permission to imagine them as well, and it's like, it's not crazy to think.
No, not at all.
You're not crazy. You're not crazy. If you say art's not a competition, you're not crazy. And you don't sound crazy, at least not to me. No. At least not to us.
No. And even if it is, it shouldn't be. I think is...
No, it's not a crazy concept.
No.
No. Yeah, capitalism's crazy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Honestly, it's like, it doesn't make sense.
There's a
full of contradictions.
gamer analogy of the art world. It's like a pay-to-win type thing. You know, we all think it's going to be like this game where we're all on an equal footing, but it's actually a pay-to-win. The more money you can invest in buying these, like, whatever, the more you're going to succeed.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. It should be a level playing field.
Yeah. It should be. Well, what if it's not a playing field?
Yeah.
You know? What if it's just we're doing what we want to do?
It's
we're like, what if everyone's just flourishing on their own terms? You know? In the way that feels best for them. Like, what if everyone just had the freedom to flourish in the way that feels best for them?
That doesn't sound crazy at all.
Yeah, I'm glad.
August.
Sometimes I get reminded
How are your
Like-
dog bites going?
Oh, they're better.
Okay. I feel bad.
They're becoming again.
All right. Well, that's like a really nice place to leave
Yeah.
it, I think. Like,
Alright. Thank you for having me
yeah,
on,
I feel
guys.
optimistic.
It's been lovely.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we should end the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget you can
thanks,
comment
everyone.
below and we will eventually respond,
Yeah.
I think.
We can talk to you as well as just to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And if you're listening to this while you're painting